Don't the hours grow shorter as the days go by? You never get to stop and open your eyes. One day you're waiting for the sky to fall. The next you're dazzled by the beauty of it all. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. These fragile bodies of touch and taste, this vibrant skin, this hair like lace, spirits open to the thrust of grace, never a breach you can afford to waste. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. When your lover's in a dangerous time, sometimes you're made to feel as if your love's a crime. Nothing worth having comes without some kind of fight. Gotta kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. When your lover's in a dangerous time, lovers in a dangerous time. Lovers in a dangerous time. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Good morning. Am I on? Check, check. I am on. Okay. I'm congested, so I'm having trouble hearing myself. So if my mic is coming through, everybody wave to me. All right, great. I'm also on cold medicine, so that may explain some of it as well. But we're still going to have fun here this morning. Maybe a lot of fun. We took us back to the 80s on our opening song, Lovers in a Dangerous Time by Bruce Cockburn, which was a moderate hit, mainly in Canada where he's from. The reason I chose that song is, as you'll see on the slide, our current series is the gospel and the 80s, and we're looking at different touchstones, movies, songs, pop culture moments from the 80s, and investigating what they can teach us about living a life of faith and following Jesus. So that's what we're dealing with in this series. I believe we're in the 5th week of it. We have my old friend, I shouldn't say old friend, my friend for a long time, Mark Pitts, will be preaching today. Excited to be partnering with him. If you would please stand and buy me some time to tune by saying hi to the person next to you. I love when stuff works out like that. I got in tune just as you guys stopped talking. How about that? Please join us in singing our first song today, Joyful, Joyful, We Adore You.
Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, open to the sun above. Melt the clouds of fear and sadness, drive the dark of night away. Giver of eternal gladness, fill us with the light of day. Now we join the mighty chorus which the morning stars began, joining with the world around us. All your works reflect your hand. Field and forest, hill and mountain, clouds of white and ocean blue. Singing bird and flowing fountain, call us to rejoice in you. You are giving and forgiving, ever blessing, ever blessed. Wellspring of the joy of living, ocean depth of happy rest. Father, Spirit, Son together, perfect communion for all time. Teach us how to love each other, fill us with your joy divine. Joyful, joyful, we adore you, God of glory, Lord of love. Hearts unfold like flowers before you, opening to the sun above. Melt the clouds of fear and sadness, drive the dark of night away. Giver of eternal gladness, fill us with the light of day.
You may be seated.
Good morning, New England Chapel. Hello. How are we? Come on, let me hear it. Let's go. It is Sunday morning. Hey, somebody told me today, and I had no idea. Did you know that today is 1 year since we have been in this building? Let's go. Yeah, it's really, really exciting. Anyway, so my name is Josh. I'm the youth pastor here, and I just wanted to take some time to let you know a little bit about what is coming up in the next couple of weeks. Our children's pastor, Joy Moon, will be opening the Kids Zone on Wednesday mornings from 9:30 to 11 for some summer fun. There will be the rooms will be open. There will be an organized craft. Parents can come and communicate with other parents. My goodness, that is so life-giving. And this, however, this will not be a drop-off event, so parents come, let your kids run around, tire themselves out so they can nap, and then you can have some wonderful conversation with adults. And that will be starting this week, and Joy is really, really looking forward to spending some time with you all. And then, next Sunday, after church, we are celebrating Independence Day with pancakes, because nothing says Independence Day like pancakes. And I cannot make it. I would really like to see someone, stack it up this high and just try to bite it. But, okay. So anyway, that'll just be really, really fun. But please stay with us afterwards as we eat pancakes and build relationships and get to know each other a little bit more with gooey, buttery pancakes. Thank you so much. You guys continue worshiping.
So our theme for this week is love. God is love, which is something that we can say kind of flippantly, but when we really think about what that means, how God interacts, Father, Son, and Spirit together, always making room for each other, never wanting to dominate the other, but perfect communion, like we said in the last song, then love becomes less sort of and more like, wow, that's sort of revolutionary. And love can really change the course of things in your life. So I picked a song that sort of deals with that, another one from the 80s, given the theme. This is When Love Comes to Town.
A sailor, I was lost at sea. I was under the waves before love rescued me. I was a fighter, I could turn on a thread. Now I stand accused of the things that I've said. When love comes to town, I'm gonna jump that train. When love comes to town, I'm gonna catch that plane. Maybe I was wrong to ever let you down, but I did what I did before love came to town. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I proposed to my love under a red sunset. I was making promises I would soon forget. She was pale as lace on her wedding gown, but I left her standing before love came to town. Ran into a juke joint where I heard a guitar scream. The notes were turning blue as the days are in a dream. As the music played, I saw my life turn around. That was the day before love came to town. When love comes to town, I'm gonna jump that train. When love comes to town, I'm gonna catch that plane. Maybe I was wrong to ever let you down, but I did what I did before love came to town. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Train. When love comes to town, I'm gonna catch that flame. Maybe I was wrong to ever let you down, but I did what I did before love came to town. Crucified my Lord. I held the scabbard as the soldier drew his sword. I threw the dice when they pierced his side, but I've seen love love conquer the great divide. When love comes to town, I'm gonna jump that train. When love comes to town, I'm gonna catch that plane. Maybe I was wrong to ever let you down, but I did what I did before love came to town. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Well, I probably just shouldn't even start. You know, the only time that Josh, myself, and Jeff, they'll allow us on stage is when they're thousands of miles away. They can't deal with whatever the repercussions are of what we're going to do and say. So that's on them. I mean, I hope you're having a good time in Austria. But, oh, man. We should probably say a prayer for you guys. I should say a prayer for you guys. So let's just open up in prayer. God, I thank you for today. And we do awesome that Cliff and Mike and Heather can get some time together and build their community so they come back refreshed and serve. And we love them so much, and they're so gifted in what they do. And we're so thankful for them. And we just pray for today as we open up your scripture and start to kind of get an understanding of love and who you are. I pray that that can just be something that works its way into our hearts. Pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So last weekend we went to a wedding, and man, I love weddings. They're so much fun. And so we're sitting there, and it was at was it St. Anselm's? It was somewhere in Newport. Is that Newport, St. Anselm's? Way off. Shows you how the wedding went for us. What's the one in Newport? That's where we were. That's where we were. Were we at a wedding? So that's where we were. And but we're sitting there and we're listening to, it was a very like formal setting, very formal wedding. We're sitting there and they're going through like the order of the service, and you're listening to like the readings and the vows, like for better, for worse, richer, for poor, as long as our lives shall live. Like this whole thing, it's just this emotional, like, man, that is love. It's pure, and it's just right. And it's like you see this couple up there, and they're just like, oh, it reminded me. So Marielle and I, we got married, and we're, I guess, pretty young, relatively speaking. So we're 23, 24. And we said the same thing. We stood up there, went through the same vows. We said all the same stuff, having this dance of we're always going to be serving each other and loving each other so deeply and immensely. And then, the wedding ends and we have this reception. We had so much fun. We went right to our honeymoon, had a blast. And then when we started to come home and learn about each other, and there's certain things you start to find out, like things like my wife started to see how particular I was at loading the dishwasher. And I really started to understand how unparticular she was at loading the dishwasher. And then she started to find out how much I really love looking at the bank statements. And I found out that she thought like plastic was the same as dollars, and you could just kind of use it a lot. And so there's this like back and forth of like, I feel like in the ceremony, when you stand up there, I feel that the pastor, the priest, the JP, they should stand up and be like, look, here's the deal. Is that here's what love really is that you're going to be going out one night, and they're going to say, hey, how do I look? And you're going to say, tonight, you look perfect. And that's going to turn into like, you mean just tonight? So what about other nights? Am I not perfect on those nights? Which is then going to turn into like this rehashing
rehashing of something that happened like 8 years ago when you had commented that you liked the haircut, but then I found out you didn't like my haircut. And so, honestly, can I actually even trust anything that you say? Next thing you're on the couch, and why are you on the couch? Because you said they looked good tonight. So, with this in mind, let's exchange the rings. Like, that's what the ceremony should be. That's what the pastor should start things off, so that you understand this idea of love. This is what we're stepping into. Isn't it crazy? It's crazy to me that in relationships, and marriage is easy. You can pick on that all day, but it's so easy how quickly we go from this like ogling in all relationships, ogling to like turning our back or being like, what am I in the middle of, right? So we have 3 kids, beautiful children. I love you guys, you're so good, yeah. 3 wonderful kids. You have your child and you say, what do you say? You're like, they're born, you're like, I could not love anything more than this. And then fast forward 1 week and it's like, will you please just go to bed? Please stop screaming. I can't do this anymore. And my kids, so I've got a high schooler, I've got a middle schooler, I've got an elementary child. And so talk about the shift. My child would be like, you know what, my best friend, I got my best friend Billy. We are the same person. And then like 3 weeks later, I'd be like, hey, how's Billy doing? They'll be like, who? They're dead to me. I don't even know them. How, weren't they your best friends like 3 weeks ago? How did we switch so quickly? You know, way back, God invited us, and Mike talks about this a lot back in Genesis. He invited us into this relationship, really sort of this marriage that we get invited into of, you know, he creates Adam and Eve to be in relationship with each other, to love, to have this selfless relationship with each other, and to have this relationship with God, right? He creates them in this amazing, amazing event, this amazing relationship, amazing understanding of love. That's the first thing that happens. And then just like 3 weeks later, when that's no longer my best friend, right? It's how quickly things shift, right? And they, Adam and Eve, very quickly go from selfless to selfish. And we know the story. They eat from the tree, and they get kicked out of the garden. And this relationship of love becomes this relationship of them being self-absorbed. And throughout the Bible, you go and read the Bible, and you'll see over and over, that's how the Bible continues to play out. These relationships that keep going south. These loving relationships that all of a sudden turn over and over and over. And in our lives, we know the same thing happens over and over. The selfless becomes the selfish. And I will say this, that I think it's easy to sit there and look at like the big thing, the one decision. So Adam and Eve, they ate from the tree, the one thing that happens. Or we look at the divorce, and all of a sudden there's the divorce. Or the friendship that ends. And it's easy to see that, but it's never that, right? It's always the little subtle pieces. It's the subtle decisions. It's the subtle choices that happen. Like someone's talking to you, and you're in like a situation that has a little bit of conflict, and all you're doing is sitting there waiting for them to finish what they have to say so that you can say, yeah, but. Or your child's trying to tell you something, explain something. Maybe it was about their day, maybe it was about like their friend, whatever it was, and what your response is to them is, hold on a second, I just got to finish this email. Or even just like the basic thing of having a conversation with somebody, like Josh trying to talk to my son, and my son just sits on his phone. No, but right, I mean, somebody is trying to talk to you, and you're just sitting there staring at your phone. These subtle little small decisions, that was unfair. I didn't even warn you. But these subtle decisions that we make, these moving from the selfless to the selfish. And the design of love becomes this valley of death because we're so self-absorbed in ourselves. And so I guess if we go back to like the wedding that we're sitting there listening and the phenomenal ceremony that it was, we have to ask ourselves, well, what is loving then? What does that actually look like and mean? Because I will say this, is that if we are going to just make that choice on our own, if we're going to base that off of our own feelings, or if we're going to base that off of what we watch or see, or the conversations that we have in the office, or the conversations you have in the cafeteria, it's going to be a pretty diverse answer to what love is. And most of it's going to be based on emotion, and most of it's going to be based off of feeling. But I think when we do things like that, it does move more to the selfish than the selfless. Because our emotions and feelings, they just play tricks on us all the time. But instead of coming up with an idea of what love is, instead of me saying, hey, this is what love is, I think it's important for us to say, well, what does God say love is? What does the Bible actually say love is? Because it actually lays it out pretty clearly for us. And ultimately, if we're striving to be more like Christ, and if we use the word Christian, which is becoming more like Christ, if that is ultimately the goal, well, let's understand what he is asking us to live, how he is asking us to live, who he really is. And so we're going to take a look at a passage that we actually heard at the wedding, and I'm sure many of you guys have heard before, but you also have heard, I'm sure many of you have heard Paul, right? There's churches named after St. Paul. There's a city named after him, so Paul. He wrote a ton of letters in the New Testament, so that's like the second half of the Bible during Jesus' life, and then there was a bunch of letters that were written to churches. Paul wrote a bunch of those letters. And what he tries to do in these letters, he writes them to churches, and he says, here, you know what, here's how you see things, here's the feelings, here's the emotions that you have, and yet here's what God is calling us into. Grapple with that, wrestle with that, over and over. This is like these letters that Paul keeps writing. And so he wrote a couple to Corinth, which was, talk about a place that was, I don't know, it reminds me really of like New York City, maybe even Boston, right? It was this like hub, and there was philosophers there was so many thoughts, there was a bunch of religions, there was so many pieces. It was actually a very bustling city. And so there were so many thoughts, ideas, opinions, philosophies that were a part of Corinth. And so there was a church that formed there. And coming out of that church, he's like, I understand this is your background. There's so many things that you're wrestling with and ideas that you're hearing and ways in which to act. They had Aphrodite, who is the goddess of love and beauty and sex, right? And so that was what they worshiped or who they worshiped. And so this is what you're seeing. And there's all these like conflicting ideas and opinions. And so Paul was writing letters to them, to the church in Corinth. And what he tries to help them understand in this particular chapter that we're going to look at is what is love, but really not just in how we try to interpret it. What is the word that they used was agape love. And listen to this understanding of love, because it's easy to sit here and talk about and say, but I'll tell you, living this it's brutal. It's very, very hard. So sacrificial love that voluntarily suffers inconvenience, discomfort, even death for the benefit of another, with expecting nothing in return. Sacrificial love that voluntarily suffers inconvenience. Nobody wants inconvenience. Discomfort. Can't say anyone in here would be like, man, I hope that's my relationship, an uncomfortable relationship. Even death for the benefit of another, expecting nothing in return. Paul's trying to help Corinth, under this church, understand, I know what you see, I know the thoughts that are around you, but this ultimately is what love is about. And right before 1 Corinthians 13, which is what we're going to look at, he has chapter 12, the chapter right before it, he's talking all about gifts. You guys have so many gifts, you have so many talents, you have all these pieces, and really that has to be couched in love. It has to be couched in this agape love. It's got to be how you use your gifts should be sacrificial. They should be giving, even if it's uncomfortable for you. We need to use that in a sense of benefiting someone else without expecting anything in return. And so with that in mind, that's what right before he says this, that's what he says. And then he says this in chapter 13, 1 Corinthians 13, it says this, And again, if you've been to a wedding, I'm sure you've heard this. If I speak in the tongues of men or angels, if I have that gift, but do not love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries, if I have this gift where I can see everything and have all the knowledge, and if I have faith that can even move mountains, but I do not love, I am nothing. If I give everything I have to the poor, give over my body to hardship, that I may boast, but do not love, I gain nothing. He's saying I could have all the gifts, all the things. I could have an awesome spouse. I could raise tremendous children. I could have a very powerful job. I could be extremely popular in school. But if I don't love, it really means nothing. If I live selfishly, I'm just a clanging gong. So then, what is love? And Paul starts to break it down. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. You know, if you were in my house this week, the way I responded to one of my children, I pulled him aside after and I said, "Do you know what I'm preaching on this Sunday?" And he said, "No, I don't know." I said, "Love." I said, "Do you know what love is?" And then I started saying, love is patient, love is kind. It doesn't envy, it's not boastful, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. How did you feel 20 minutes ago? I said, I gave you the demonstration of what love isn't. It keeps no records of wrong. Imagine that. Imagine not being like, yeah, but you remember when? Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. It always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. You know, I used to work with teenagers here, actually, and in relationships especially, I would talk about how we don't live in absolutes. We don't live in absolutes. Ways in which we talk to people, so it's not I always or you never. Like, we need to stay away from those words and those terms. And that's like across the board. That's as adults, it's staying away from these absolute terms. Because even if you, in my mind, always leave the lights on, chances are you have turned them off at one point in your life. So it's just not true. The absolutes are not true. In relationship, 100% of the time. That's what I'm going to say. But what does this passage do the whole way through? It uses absolutes. Love never fails. Love is not easily angered. It doesn't keep any records of wrong. It always perseveres. It always trusts. It always hopes. How can Paul say this to the church? How can he use absolutes? And how is this really even a reality? John, I'll tell you, read 1 John, because you read 1 John and you'll get like a he talks so much about love in that chapter. And he ends that with, God is love. That's what he says. And so what can we, if we put those two things together, if we put 1 Corinthians and then God is love together, we can start to see and understand that God is the absolute. And if we love like him, then we must love absolutely. Why? Because, as John says, he first loved us. You know, when I lost it, how did God respond to me? Did he respond the same way that I responded to my son? You know what he did? God just lost it on me. He ripped me apart. How can you can't even get love right, Mark? No. His agape love, he sacrificed his own son, Jesus, for me in moments like that. I don't deserve that. You know, there were so many things that I wanted to include in this from a movie perspective. And it was just this was going to be like a 2-hour sermon, and nobody needed that. So, thank you, Paul. Paul's in full agreement. I mean, we're probably running late right now. But anyway, there's so many scenes that are so good from this. The Princess Bride, have people seen that? Okay, so the lack of hands, I immediately am keeping records of wrong. Trying not to delight in evil, but I am. Opening scene, Wesley. He comes in, right? And so he's the farm boy, and Buttercup is, he's serving on the farm for her. And so she keeps asking him to do one thing after the next. Farm boy, fetch me that pitcher. Farm boy, give me this water. Farm boy, do this. Farm boy, do this. And what does Wesley say? As you wish, every time, right? And then over the course of time, she starts to realize that as you wish actually means, I love you. And then turns out that I realize I love him too. Well, he's going away, Dread Pirate Roberts, right? And so he goes away, he says, I will always come for you. I'll always come for you. Well, years pass, and he doesn't come for her. He doesn't come back. And so she ends up getting engaged to Prince Humperdinck. What a name. Man, I wish, maybe I don't wish my name was Humperdinck, but stay on task. Focus is right. Jeez. So she gets engaged to someone. Well, he comes back in a mask because it's how it had to play out. So he comes back, and they're sitting on top of a hill. He does all these things to get back to her, and she's sitting on top of the hill. He says, how long until you got engaged before whoever your true love that you're talking about died, that you thought he died? And she said, I died that day. And then what does she do? She takes him and she pushes him. You can die too for all I care, pushes him down. And he starts rolling, and what does he say as he's tumbling down? No, he doesn't. He goes, as you wish. Oh, my sweet Wesley. And then tumbles down. Even when she is trying to kill him, he says, as you wish. Paul is trying to get the church of Corinth and to understand this, and we get to eavesdrop on this by reading this passage, that Jesus comes to this world. He does all these miracles. He gives these teachings that are impacting, and they change lives. He raises people from the dead. He does all these. He heals the sick. All these things that he does. He has these people who are so close to him, these 12 disciples, right, who are so close to him. He pours out his love for them. Time, he gives them time. He gives them an ear. He pays attention to them. He loves them unconditionally, expecting nothing in return from them. And they're sitting up in the upper room, right? Right before he's going to die, and he says, I'm going to die. And you all are going to leave me. And what do they say? They give their vows to him. We will never leave you. Never. And then the subtle self-centeredness creeps into the disciples. Judas chooses money over a relationship, and he betrays Jesus. Peter, he chooses safety when he sits there and says, I don't even know who this guy is who's on trial. I have no idea. Chooses safety over his relationship. There's two other disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane where Jesus was praying, and he said, please stay awake. Please pray with me. And they choose comfort by falling asleep on him. Moving from the selfless to the selfish. And then the moment in the garden. Jesus knows he's going to die. And I'll tell you, if I put myself in his shoes, right? He knows he's going to die. I've done all these things for all these people. This is me being selfish. I've done all these things for all these people. I've poured out my love for them. I've healed people. I've given phenomenal. I mean, these are top-notch sermons, and people are still functioning the way they're functioning. Like, all these things. I'm dying for people, and they turn their backs on me? That choose themselves over me over and over and over again? These people that care more about how a dishwasher is loaded than actually, like, hearing their spouse's feelings. People who just want to give a rebuttal rather than listen. People who want to fulfill their own sexual desires rather than remain faithful. And I would say, get me out. Why am I doing this? And Jesus prays, God, I don't want to go through the torture of this. But then we get the opportunity as we're reading this to really see love, right? We get to see this. Patience, kindness, doesn't envy. It's not boastful, it's not proud, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking. It keeps no records of wrong. It doesn't delight in evil, it rejoices in the truth, it always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. We get to see that when Jesus says, but not my will, but yours be done. God, as you wish. Sacrificial love that voluntarily suffers inconvenience, discomfort, even death for the benefit of another without expecting anything in return. That's what Christ is for us. That's what he did for us when he sat there and said, not my will, but yours be done. Why? Because I love you so much, God. Here's what I would love for us to do this week, is to take that 1 Corinthians passage, 1 through 8, go 4 through 8, that's all the love pieces, and stick it up on your fridge. And it would be very easy to look at that list and see where we all fall short. It'd be very easy for me to look at that and see I'm easily angered. I'm going to fix that. But I don't want you to get wrapped up in the gap that maybe you feel in that list. I want us instead to daily read that through, not as an accusation against you, but to understand who God is. Say, this is God. He's patient and he's kind. So that we can understand that and start to let that work into our hearts, because I think sometimes we have this understanding that he's the opposite of that. And how screwed up the world is, and how much people bicker and fight and argue over things that happen on a daily basis in this world. We don't see love, but to understand this is who God is. To read that and just see him. God came for us all to demonstrate his love for us all to the point of death. And what better way to celebrate God's love than with communion? And I'll have the servers can come on up and the musicians can come up. Because this gives us an opportunity to come in a community and be here and celebrate and remember God's love. And so on that night when he was betrayed, he stood there and took the bread. And he broke it and said, "This is my body broken for you all, for me, in your anger. When you keep a record of wrong, when you even maybe delight in evil, this is broken for you. Eat it, take of it, and do this to remember me, to remember love." And after they finished eating, he took the wine and he poured it in the cup, and he raised it and he said, "Look, this is my blood. That I said, Father, as you wish. I love you. I love my people to the point that I will die for them in the middle and in the midst of their anger." Drink this. Do this in remembrance of me. Remember love. And that's what we get to do. And God invites us all, come on down. Celebrate that love. Celebrate that love that he gives for us and celebrate it with each other so that we can take that, turn around, and start to give that away to the people around us. Come on up and enjoy communion.
We've been blind, we have not seen, wandered off and gone astray. We have sought security, not the cross that bears your name. Thence is God, our hearts and home. Comfort sings a siren tune. We're a valley of dry bones. Lead us back to life in you. We've been blind, we have not seen. We have shunned the weak and poor. Worship beauty, courted kings, and the things their gold affords. We chase power and control. Ego sings a siren tune. Gained the world but lost our souls. Lead us back to life in you. You have caused the blind to see. We have blinded them again. Turned away strangers in need, eager, ready to condemn. Though our hope is you alone, pride it sings a siren tune. We've been throwing us back to life in you. We've been deaf, we have not heard those who cry out to be saved. We have wounded, causing hurt, bringing hatred in your name. Fear has turned our hearts to stone, followed Pied Piper's tunes. Cast our idols from their thrones, lead us back to life in you. Go now with this blessing. We are called to love God with all of our hearts, souls, and minds. We're likewise called to serve by loving God's creation and all that lives within it. So, may our hearts be open and overflowing with compassion. May we be conduits of God's limitless love, and each do our part to bring the kingdom here to earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Go in peace.